All right, let's have a look at Trump's inauguration. Michael Kroger, of course, you follow US politics very closely. What were your main takeouts, or perhaps what were your favourite things out of Trump's executive orders?
Well, Trump has hit the ground running, as you would expect him to have done. He's issued the executive orders that he said he'd do. You know, border protection is critical for America, and it's not as that Anglican minister said today, you know, him not showing compassion. I mean, no country can open its borders to 11 or more million undocumented people. I thought yesterday was typical Donald Trump. He's leading from the front. He wants to make America great again, as he said. He's going to make some serious economic inroads. I'm glad he's getting rid of DEI. I'm glad he's got a federal hiring freeze. You know, I'm glad they're going to have a cutback in federal employees. I mean, the Americans got a $36 trillion US dollars, 50 trillion plus Australian deficit that's getting worse, 3 or 4 trillion every year. So he's got to do something about government expenditure. So, you know, he's at least making those tough decisions. The one thing I didn't like, to be quite frank, was when he had the families of the hostages on the stage yesterday at the Capitol Theatre. He talked about the J6 hostages, and I thought the combining of the two was grated greatly with me. But apart from that, he's doing everything he said he'd do.
At least he had the hostages up there front and stage, putting that issue,
absolutely,
you know, squarely on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Because you're wearing the hostage pin, Michael Kroger, as I usually do, and we do need them to come home. Richo, this must have been a tough day for you, having to watch the inauguration. We know you were supportive of Kamala Harris. Do you admit that, you know, some of Trump's moves yesterday were sensible? Maybe you support getting people back into the office. Maybe you support having two genders.
Oh yeah, look, I don't believe that Trump, that everything he says or everything he does is evil. It's clearly not. He does some things that are good, that are worthwhile. That any one of us would do if we had the chance. So good luck to him. I'm glad that he's doing some of those things. He's just got to make sure that he reins himself in, because sometimes I think of the rhetoric that he can come up with, it just gets a little bit out of hand. I think he needs to be a little more careful when he opens his mouth.
I had Peter Dutton on the show last night, and I asked him about Trump's return to the presidency and this global shift away from progressive politics. And Dutton does think it's a movement that's sweeping the globe, even Australia. Here's what he had to say.
I think there is going to be a near revolution that comes with the Trump administration in relation to a lot of the woke issues that might be fashionable in universities and at the ABC, but that just aren't cutting it around kitchen tables at the moment, where people can't pay their bills under the Albanese cost of living crisis.
Michael, what do you think? Do you think we can finally say that woke politics and the age of woke is coming to an end, that people are getting sick of it, and partly because of the very real cost of living pressures, as Peter Dutton says? Well, we've reached peak woke probably 6 months ago, and now the world is turning against this left-wing extremism. I mean, you can't blame the woke activists. These are left-wing activists all over the world. They're in corporate affairs departments of major corporations, of universities, of arts organisations, the ABC, etc., and they've done a very good job at convincing the left of the West to go extreme left on all these issues. And now, as people have looked at this more closely and woken up, they've decided this extremism has to come to an end. So hopefully the Business Council of Australia and DEI policies of Australian corporations will be revoked in due course, and people will get back to merit-based appointments. So, yeah, Peter Dutton's absolutely right. It is sweeping the world. It's certainly sweeping Australia. And if you have a look at the devastating poll released in the Fairfax Press tonight, in The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, where Dutton is now preferred Prime Minister by 5% over Albanese, and the Labor vote in Victoria is now 25%. Dutton may not be on 72, as I've predicted in recent months. He may be on a lot more seats than 72, because Labor are at serious risks of losing a whole lot of other seats in Victoria. than the ones that I've previously thought. When you look at Goldstein and Kooyong, those seats were propped up by Labor voters voting for the Teal. Well, if the Labor vote's evaporating in Victoria, boy, that puts Kooyong and Goldstein really at risk.
No, it's an interesting point. Richo, what do you think? I want to know what you think about, you know, this rejection of woke playing into the federal election here, but also what Michael just said about the fact that Peter Dutton might be heading for perhaps majority government, not just 72 seats, that he could actually win outright. What do you think?
I think Dutton's doing very well, and I've been saying that for some months. I think Labor wrote him off as they once did Tony Abbott. Always a very, very dangerous thing to do, to write off political leaders like this. Never would I do it, because I don't think you can get to that position of being a political leader if you're a complete dope. It doesn't work that way. It means you've got an active and obviously a pretty good brain to be able to do it. And so I'm not someone who knocks Dutton over any of that stuff. I think Dutton is a formidable opponent for Labor, and at the moment you've got to say he'd be favourite of the bookies to get up.
Really? So you also think Peter Dutton's now the favourite? So we could be seeing history being broken here and a one-term government for the first time in a century?
Well, it's possible. I mean, it doesn't happen in Australia very often, but it's possible. And I'm certainly not going to write off the chance of that. But I think, you know, it's going to come down to the government getting back to focusing on what matters.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've done much of that lately.
No, definitely.